So, welcome to Tea with Myrtis, Artistically Speaking, which is a series of conversations with artists featured in the Women Heal Through Rite and Ritual exhibition. Today's guest is Tawny Chatmon, a photographer who takes a multi-layered approach in producing work that investigates the politics of Blackness and the historical portrayal of the Black body. Welcome to Tea Time, Tawny.
Thank you.
It's so good to see you. So I begin each conversation by asking the artist how the coronavirus has impacted their artistic production, or if it has, how has the experience been for you?
Um, it's so difficult to say because it has impacted and it has stopped me from doing things that I had scheduled, of course. The exhibitions have been pushed back or pushed online. Um, but as far as production, yes and no. It stopped some portrait sittings that I had scheduled in
Mm,
Maryland, and I'm stuck in Texas. So it stopped that, but it hasn't necessarily stopped me from being able to create. It's actually forced me to uh, pick up where I left off on some other work that I put to the side
mhm,
and said I was going to come back to. So it allowed me to do that. But it is slowing me in the sense that I can't get things framed. Right now, my framer's shop is closed. He's in Maryland. A frame building company that I use, they were unable to ship me a
mm,
frame that I had purchased. Another company that I started to use to build frames, they just messaged me and said they were shutting down their business after I think they said
wow.
40 years. Um, it stopped me in little ways, but not completely.
Mhm, mhm. Wow. Yes, it's interesting how this situation has had a rippling effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as an artist whose photographs need to be framed, there's a infrastructure there that supports that, and now it's like you can't access that. So it's interesting to hear how that's impacted you.
Yeah, I can't go out and find frames. Like, it's a lot of
Yeah,
things.
no sourcing for you, no foraging,
No,
no antique
no,
shops and auction house visits for you,
no.
right?
But it's stopped some things and opened up others. So,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
for the first month, I really just wasn't inspired to do anything. I was just taking a moment, and then I got that spark back. So,
Good, good. Well,
stopping and going.
yes, it'll be great to see what comes out of this in terms of your work and if there's new inspirations
Yeah.
uh, that will be evident in it. So another question I want to pose is, at what point did you know you were an artist?
Um, that's I got that I was asked that recently, and I just feel like I think I always knew I was a creator.
Mm-hmm.
Always. I can't even, and I just thought, I really honestly thought that everybody thought they were a creator. I've always created my entire life.
Mm,
So I don't even think it's something that I knew or a aha moment that I had. It's just something that I feel I've always been.
mm-hmm. And the early part of your career as a photographer is much different than what we see now. Tell us where you began and then how you've evolved to where you are now.
Okay, so first, I had no idea that I would even become a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, I always was creating something. I painted furniture, I repurposed old things, made them but for the most part, I thought I was going to be an actress. I always loved dramatic arts. I was in my aunt's theater company and things like that. I was in plays and things like that. And then I just I don't know what, I can't even tell you what happened. I just
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to pursue it anymore. I, I went to a theatrical art school in Washington, D.C. after high school, and I completely quit. Maybe I recently requested my transcripts, and they were like, "Are you sure you want them?" I'm not sure they'll be of any use for you. I think I probably attended after that for maybe 2 months or so, and I
Mm.
just quit. I just didn't have the desire to do it anymore. And my husband, since I had always loved doing different things and creating in different ways, he actually is who suggested I give it a try, give photography a try.
Wow.
Up the camera, and I no, I haven't put it down since. It's the one thing I haven't grown tired of.
Mm-hmm.
I started just bouncing around, shooting whatever, whoever, anything that was going to pay me at that time. I just really had no real direction at that point. I just needed to find a way to earn an income.
Yes.
And then after my son, that was a game changer for me, because
Mm-hmm.
um, I just wanted to photograph him every day. Every day, I just want, my camera was in his face. He was so beautiful. Um, and I just wanted to document his life. And I want to say it was my sister wanted me then to document her kids. And then
Mm-hmm.
her friends wanted me to document their kids. And it kind of just
Yes.
went from there. And through some of those clients was how I got my first commercial job, shooting for the YMCA in Washington, D.C.
Mm.
They hired me, and I began to shoot their annual reports and their advertisements and things like that. And it went from there to me gaining other commercial clients in that way. So that's how commercial photography started for me.
And then there was a pivotal point in your life when your father became ill,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that really changed the trajectory of your work.
Yeah. So let's see. I want to say it was April. My father was diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Mm.
Maybe March 2010. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And we were being told, oh, prostate cancer is just, it's common. A lot of men get it. Most men will have it before they die.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and we thought this was going to be something that he beat. We thought he was just going to go through it, and that was going to be that. um, and then we found out it was further along.
Mm.
That's when everything changed. They told us um, that he had maybe up to 5 years to live.
Mm-hmm.
um, and things just kind of spiraled after that. They started getting worse and worse. Um, and my parents came to stay with us, and I helped care for my father. And during that time, him and I discussed me photographing his battle. Um,
Mm.
we thought still, we didn't care what they said. He's going to beat this, and I'm going to document it.
Yes.
And so as he stayed with us, I documented every day his life. And I feel that my camera somehow protected me from what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I really couldn't really see it, even though they were telling me and telling us this, you have to prepare. This is not, we still just thought that he was going to survive. Um, and I ended up capturing him losing his life to cancer
Mm.
instead of beating it. And after that, I really didn't, I wasn't inspired to really shoot that much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a second, but I realized that there was more I could do with my camera than using it for monetary gain or to
Mm-hmm.
earn an income. I still pursued commercial jobs because I had to still make a living at
Yes.
that time, but it kind of put me on a path to start doing things that had a personal meaning to me. They first started with doing projects with my daughter. Um, and and I say my daughter because I included my other two, uh,
Mm-hmm.
my son and my youngest daughter, but they just were over it. They were over the camera. They didn't really want any part. So me and my middle daughter would just get lost. And I would photograph her at these places, and it tied into what my father used to do with us. He
Mm.
used to just take us on drives, and we would just get lost in, at places that, and just go for a ride, and then just go back home. So I did the same thing with my daughter for about a year,
Mm-hmm.
still battling with myself. Um, uh, you know, how can I do more with my camera? What can I do with my camera? I just didn't feel the same using my camera anymore to make money in that way. I don't know if that makes
Yes,
sense. It just
it
wasn't,
does.
kind of was feeling like, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I doing this? Why do I want these clients? It just kind of felt like I don't know. I couldn't come up with any reason why I wanted
Yes.
these clients. Why are you going after these clients? I liked it, but it wasn't something that was really driving me. And a little while after that, um, and I can't say that I made some type of decision, this is it,
Mm-hmm.
there were just very different things that were happening. I took like a lot of my tear sheets, and I was in my basement, and I just started painting over them just because I didn't want to see it anymore, or just doing different things. And I don't know if I was getting out frustration or what it was. And then uh, just different things started to happen. Trayvon Martin, I really feel like that was a very
Mm.
big turning point for me as well. I had never seen, um, a child be killed. I had never seen a child be killed, and people saying things like he deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't seen anything like that. And I remember turning to my Facebook to kind of complain about these things, cry about these things. And I was just really just taken aback by the way some people were reacting. I was seeing clients of mine or associates of mine post about different things, like
Mm-hmm.
bears being killed and endangered whales, but they weren't posting and talking about this boy. And then it was just one thing after another, after another, after another. And I had already, I think at that point, made the decision that I wasn't going to take any more commercial jobs. I didn't know what I was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started to create. I started to create because I started feeling like I'm in here. I'm like, my world is being turned upside down. I'm feeling like I'm being ripped from the inside. Seeing all these things happening to us, happening to people that look like my son, my husband, my father, me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I felt like there was more I could do than just complain. I mean, I was going to the marches, I was donating, but it felt like something more powerful that I could do. And so I just started creating. I just started creating stuff in response to what I was seeing, because if I would have let it, I feel like I could have become somebody I didn't want to become. A lot of anger and frustration and sadness was building up in me. Cardan had to tell me to just step away from it. But I was in such shock and disbelief that this was the world that my kids live in, that we have to walk around in, and this is happening to people like us every time I turn around. And so that's, you know, it was no decision, you know, that like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, kind of all happened. And that's how I just started really switching what I wanted to focus on.
So your work really talks about and is a commentary on the nuances of Blackness and a celebration of Black childhood, elevating the Black body. All of that comes out as a result of the emotions that you felt surrounding the death of Trayvon and other innocent Black children whose lives have been taken.
You know, the little girls and boys sitting home from school. It's just, it's almost as if, it's almost as if being Black to people is a crime. Yeah, that's what it felt like for me.
And I think another way in which Black bodies have been minimized and as it relates to their value and importance in our society is demonstrated through the lack of presence of Black imagery in museums. And you've talked about that being a concern to you, the experience you've had walking through museums with your children, and that appears to be another motivating factor in your work. So talk to us about that as well.
Yeah, it's again, like I said, it's all an accumulation of things that began to stick out to me, that I began to notice. I was here telling my babies, you can be anything you want. And I just started to feel like that. I know I wasn't lying to them because they can, but I know it's a little bit more difficult for them. Not even a little bit, but a lot. It's going to be a lot more difficult for them. And I am saying I want this for them, and I want this, and I want a world like this, and I want a world like this. But what am I contributing to it? How am I contributing to that world that I want them to grow up in? And not only them, Black children. How am I contributing? And even this is important for white children to see as well. But how am I contributing to the world that I want my Black kids to grow up in? And I just started to notice, I didn't notice this in my younger years. I was just, I don't know, I just, you know, you just do what you're told, and what you're taught is what it is, you know. And then when I had kids of my own, just begin to notice, walking in the museums with them, we're just walking and no one looks like them. No. These frames that I love, we're not framed in them for the most part. And so I feel that what we see growing up is very important. What we're told, how we're spoken to, what we see becomes a very big part of who we become and what we think is beautiful and how we feel about these things. And so when I look at the artworks that I love, I start to feel disconnected from them because, like, you don't see yourself in them. And the same with my kids. I wanted them to see themselves framed in this way, in these big, beautiful frames as we're walking through the museum. I know that it's going to have an effect on them. Whether they know it or not, it is. And whether I know it or not, it did. Whether I realized it at that time or it took me a little while longer to realize it, these things that we see are important. And we need to see the truth. And the truth is, we're beautiful. Our culture is very beautiful. We're precious, we're valuable. And that's what I wanted to convey with the work that I'm creating.
Yes, and you do it beautifully. Let's talk a little bit about your creative process and the inspiration for your work. So you not only photograph your subjects, but you also paint on them. So can you tell us about that, please?
Yeah, so um, there are photographers that can get exactly what they want to say across through just one photograph, just the photograph. And it is conveyed so beautifully. But what I wanted to say, I wasn't able to just get it across with the photograph. I wasn't able to relay the message that I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to get across with the photograph. There's so many underlying messages within the work. Um, um, and so I don't want to go off track. I want to make sure
Uh-huh.
answer what you asked me. So can you repeat your question?
Yes, so I was asking about process and influence. So I know your work is influenced by Renaissance portraiture, Byzantine, the Renaissance and Byzantine era, and also in terms of style, Gustav Klimt's golden phase.
Yes. And so again, with the underlying messages, when I thought of in thinking of what artworks stand out to me, which I love, which I think of often, they usually were from Gustav Klimt's golden phase. And even further than that, using gold
Mm-hmm.
in a world where material things at times often mean more than Black lives, gold is considered valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so there's an underlying message with that as well. And so I wanted people to have the same feeling that I felt when I look at his work. Um, but I just wanted to put faces like ours in that style of work.
Yes.
And so that was the inspiration behind that.
So let's talk about some of your work. I'm sitting beside or slightly in front of and to my right is Mother Gods. And this piece is in our exhibition, Women Healed Through Rite and Ritual. So can you tell me a little bit about that piece?
Yeah, so this piece was inspired by religious iconography, motherhood, and I I have been asked, well, why don't we see the mother's face? So I feel that it's
Yes.
important to specify why I only made a small portion of her face
Mhm.
visible. Um, and that was because I didn't necessarily want her to have a face. I wanted her to be, um, I didn't want you to know who she was.
Yes.
I wanted you to wonder who she was. I wanted you to wonder, is this her mother? Is this her godmother? Is this, who is this? Is this God? Is this my mother? Is this, I wanted her to be anyone. And for her arms, I'm not sure if the viewer can tell, but I purposely elongated them so that they wrapped around her child, or the child. I'm not going to say her child.
Yeah.
um, and so I have seen those paintings of Mary, and and I just kind of was playing off of that. And I just basically wanted, and I titled, of course, the piece Mother God, for that reason.
Mhm.
She's a Black woman. Human life started with a Black woman. There are a lot of messages in that piece also.
Yes, yes. So another piece that's featured in the show is Little Edie, who is part of the Redemption series. So can you tell us about Little Edie and the series itself?
Okay. Little Edie, her name is Eden. I've photographed her a few times. She's a sweetheart. um, I think I've been photographing her since she was, I want to say maybe she was actually one of the commercial models that I was photographing
Mm,
first. I want to say she was 3 when I first started photographing her. Um, and I think maybe now she's 9, maybe, or
okay.
8. And I just thought her pose was so sweet. And it was also me pushing myself to um, paint dresses. Yeah, so for the most part, the dresses that I'd been painting on the girls, they were standing. Um, and so I just wanted to push myself um, to paint a subject in a different position. So, and there's no real, there's no specific meaning behind this portrait.
Mm-hmm.
It's just part of this series. The Redemption, I titled it this way by asking, is there redemptive measure in visual arts?
Mm,
Um, uh, Redemption to me means regaining, taking back, um, getting possession or regaining possession of something. And that to me means taking back and celebrating these hairstyles. And if you'll notice from that entire series, the little girls have Bantu knots or braids or
mm-hmm.
box braids. Um, and so these are the styles that little girls have been ridiculed over, sent home from school, unable to go to proms over, for wearing braids and extensions. And little Edie has extension braids in her hair. So
Mm-hmm.
there's that underlying message um, in that piece. But so yeah, it was that question: is there do visual arts have that power?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe so. I think that we do. I think that we have the power to retell our narratives, tell our stories in our own way through our artwork, and put out work that tells the truth about who we are and how beautiful we are as a whole. So yeah, that that's where that.
Yes. And the last piece or the third that's featured in the exhibition is titled Two, and that is part of the Awakening series.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
so can you tell us about Two, the models that are featured in that, and the series?
yeah. So those are my cousins.
Mm-hmm.
They're twins, and um, I titled it Two for that very reason. It's them
Yes.
you know. One is in front, one is behind. Just as your twin, as your sister, I have your back. And even if they weren't related, as Black women, I feel that that is pretty much how we are. You may not be my sister by blood, but you're still my sister, and I got your back.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, and the awakening was titled "The Awakening." I think for a number of reasons. When I started putting out the work that I was creating, I received so many beautiful messages from Black women, children, men, people, telling me how the work has made them feel about their hair. Something that they, one woman told me that she had, she said, I literally just thought about relaxing my hair, and this portrait convinced me. And I have, of course, no problem with anybody. I think Black women, Black children, we need to be able to wear our hair however we want without being harassed.
Absolutely. Yes.
So let us be. However we want to wear our hair is how we want to wear our hair.
Yes, we can express our beauty any way we want.
Any way we want. So that, the work, I always want to make sure it has, I'm definitely never saying, oh, just, don't relax your hair, don't do this, don't do this. What I'm saying is we're beautiful in all ways, in all shades, in all shapes and forms. And, and so I think that I felt like the work was awakening me
Mm-hmm.
and viewers of it.
Oh, I love that. So you had a solo exhibition in New York at Fotografiska, and it was incredible. How many pieces were featured in the exhibition?
Ooh.
Was there about 20?
I think there was 20, 21, 19 to 21.
Yeah, it was amazing. And the title was Inheritance, which celebrated the beauty of Black childhood, African American culture, and the delicate intricacies of protecting and raising a Black child in today's world. On the surface, the paintings, your hand, in terms of the way in which the work was rendered, was incredible. I mean, absolutely exquisite. But underneath, you were addressing some very serious issues about discrimination, racism, stereotyping. A lot of it was related to and exhibited through the way in which you photographed, especially the children. And you also included young boys who had, the barbershop cuts.
Yes.
So tell us why you decided to address such serious concerns in that body of work.
So Inheritance, the title came from, I saw a friend of mine post, and that's also a lot of things that inspire me. I'll see certain quotes or certain signs, that I'll think are signs, and it'll just reconfirm to keep going. And so I had seen my friend post this quote, and she said she doesn't even know where she got it. She doesn't know the origin, but it said, our children inherit what we do not resolve. And that spoke to me on so many levels, because as I said before, if I don't address this and I wait for it to be addressed, or I wait for it to be affixed, and I don't add my voice somehow to it, then I'm not, how can I complain? Because you still can complain, but I just didn't feel that, I felt like I could do more. So that's what's important to me, creating things that I want to see exist, that I want them to see exist. And so I felt that it was important to show that body of work so that in the middle of Park Avenue.
Yes, we should add that.
Yeah. on, um, on the floor of a museum where Black children, Black girls, Black people can walk through and view themselves in these big golden frames. It just, to me, offered a different experience than what we feel when we're walking in most museums today. And this definitely doesn't take away from the many beautiful Black-owned galleries that have made it their life's mission
Mhm.
to show this kind of work, or the African American museums. I just felt like I was able to interrupt a space in a place where we wouldn't normally see ourselves in this way.
Absolutely. Um, Another part of the imagery that I felt was really impactful were the photographs that featured the beautiful Black families, the unity.
Yeah.
And I thought that, as you said, conveying messages through the work that are positive.
Yes.
Talk about why those images were so important for
Uh,
you.
so for me, I'm coming from a standpoint of being a mother.
Hmm.
And so that's why it's easy for me to create mother and daughter photos, mother and son, or mother and children. That's the standpoint that I'm coming from, motherhood. And so I started to feel that men were missing from these portraits, but not purposely. And I
Hmm.
already feel like there's a misconception and that Black men often abandon their children and all
Hmm.
of these things. And I didn't want to, by any means, play into any part of that, because of my father. My father was the most amazing man I've ever known.
Mm.
Always took care of us. My husband takes wonderful care of his children, and most of the men that I know are amazing fathers. And so I felt that it was important to also convey that through my work as well.
Yes, yes. Well, it was a really powerful exhibition. Um, And thank you today, Tawny, for your time, for joining me for tea. This was such a great conversation. And for those of you who are in Baltimore or afar, know that when we're able to reopen, we're going to invite everyone in to enjoy and celebrate this powerful exhibition here, Women Heal Through Rite and Ritual. And Tawny's work just speaks so strongly to the power of healing through the arts. And it was just a pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right.